As you all know, the biggest game of the week is the Florida Gators versus the Miami Hurricanes. For the game from a Florida perspective, we're going to bring in the GOAT. And when I say the GOAT, he's the GOAT because not only is he the best in the business, he's also the guy that helped me get on in the first place. So if you hate what I do, blame him. Mr. Keith Niebuhr. Keith.
Yeah, man. I mean, don't blame me for all this. I mean, come on now. What's going on, Dukes?
Man, not much, man. So listen.
Yeah.
Big game this week. So I want to get into recruiting from a Florida perspective.
Sure.
So when it comes to hold on, I'm gonna start it over.
Yep.
When it comes to recruits, I'm start it. When it comes to recruits that'll be in attendance, how big of a game do you think this is volume-wise for Florida recruiting?
Well, it looks like it's going to be one of the more impressive visitors lists we've seen at the Swamp in years. I mean, I was fortunate enough to cover multiple Iron Bowls, the Auburn-Alabama game, and those were always just fantastic visitors lists, like nothing you've seen anywhere else, really. And this is comparable to that. I mean, you've got the number one linebacker in the country, Ty Jackson, number one linebacker in the country for On3. He's going to be there. Number one cornerback in the country for On3, DJ Pickett. He's an LSU commit. He's going to be there. You've got multiple Auburn commits. You've got a Georgia commit. You've got every top junior pretty much in the state of Florida is going to be there, including the number one prospect in the state. So, it's just going to be an absolutely loaded day. And it's also, look, it's a great opportunity for Florida. The issue with Florida's challenging schedule is it's tough, right? I mean, you could lose some games. But the upside of that is if you do something, if you do anything against this schedule, and you're going to have a lot of opportunities to host big home games. So as big as this visitors list is, if you play well and look decent and have a good product on the field, you've got a lot of opportunities to get guys back on campus this year. So put on a good show this weekend, win or lose. I mean, you want to win, obviously, but win or lose, look good, look like you're a program headed in the right direction. You're going to get a lot of these kids back during the fall. So this is a potentially huge opportunity for the Florida Gators.
Are there any recruits suspected to be there that Miami is recruiting really hard, that Florida is also recruiting really hard, that this game and future games may be able to sway their decision?
A lot of the underclassmen, I would say, of the senior class, because underclassmen, the guys that are sophomores and juniors, they're still kind of formulating their opinions of these programs, right? And so whoever can win this game can really be a team that may be able to, look, if you can impress a young guy early, it's going to stick with them, right? And I'll give you one guy. Derek Cooper is the number one prospect in the state as a junior, and he's from South Florida, and he's coming up to the game, and he's going to be a five-star guy. Number one recruit in the state of Florida for the 2026 class. So whoever wins this game, it's going to be significant to them because it's going to stick with him, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's no longer what's Miami's record versus Florida's record because they play different types of schedules. It's, hey, I saw them play each other and Team A beat Team B. So it is significant. But in the senior class, I'll give you a few names. Joshua Moore, Dukes, is a four-star receiver committed to Florida, and he's from Pembroke Pines, Florida, West Broward High School. That's right in that Fort Lauderdale area. Now, again, he's committed to Florida. And by the way, your old buddy, Junior Rosegreen, who played at Auburn, told me he thinks this guy can be this year's Cam Coleman, the outstanding freshman receiver at Auburn. He thinks he's of that level. Well, Josh Moore committed to Florida in late June, and Miami, though, is keeping its foot on the gas, hoping that Florida falters this season and hoping that they can beat Florida this weekend. And Florida obviously hoping that they can hold everybody off, and they can do that by looking good. He has flat out said, look, as long as they perform at a decent level this year, I'm sticking with Florida. But if they struggle or something happens to Billy Napier, well, I'm going to look around. So there you go. There's your classic example right there of a guy that you're saying, hey, this is an important game. Now, obviously, it's not do or die. I mean, whoever loses this game could go on to have a strong season. And that's happened many times in this series, Dukes, when they've played in week one. And the team that lost actually went on to have a better season than the team that won the game. But it's a real measuring stick because you get to see the two teams on the same field at the same time, which you don't get to see very often. They don't play every year. So to me, Joshua Moore is the big one to watch in the senior class. Oh, I'll give you another one. Actually, can I give you one more? LSU commit DJ Pickett, number one cornerback in the country. Yes, he's committed to LSU, and secondary coach Corey Raymond, formerly of the Florida staff. but he's also looking at Florida and Miami. Like, these two teams are going to work all through the fall to try to flip him. And he has flat out said, hey, look, if they look good, I'm going to look at them more. So again, here's another game, another opportunity for both of these programs. And that's a recruitment where Billy Napier has really gotten heavily involved in. All right. So Florida has sat here and told recruits for months and months and months, we're better as a program. You're going to see this. Just wait, And so now he's got to see something. It's been a leap of faith up until now. So now recruits like DJ Pickett want to see that progress, want to see that development on the field. And if Florida can do it, DJ Pickett's a guy that Florida could potentially make some noise with this year. Now, again, he lives in Zephyr Hills, Florida. That's 90 minutes from the University of Florida, maybe 2 hours from the University of Florida. So he's right up the road. They need to give him a reason to want to go there, right? And it could start with a win Saturday.
In the 24 class, DJ Lagway was the guy, a huge get for Billy Napier and company. Then you supplement that with a guy like LJ McCray. Who is somebody in the 25 class that's currently committed to Florida that you think can have that type of impact that's making a splash and saying we're really happy we got that guy?
Well, I'll give you a few guys. One of them is a guy I just mentioned, Joshua Moore. I mean, On3 has him rated higher than anybody else. We have him as the number 57 overall recruit in the country, 6'4", 205, 210-pound receiver down in South Florida. And again, they think he is like elite, high level. And so he's a guy that should be able to come in, be that big, tall, bulky receiver in the offense. I'll give you a couple others too. 2 legacy recruits and real impressive guys on the field and off the field. One of them is Vernell Brown III, and he's going to play receiver. He's a slot receiver from Orlando Jones. His dad played at Florida. His granddad played at Florida. He has great uncles that played at Florida. And you're talking about another top 100 recruit. In fact, he's in the top 50 with the On3 industry rankings. Dukes, he's only a few spots away from being a 5-star. So Vernell Brown is a guy that's polished as a receiver, super smart up here, electric, fast, can do a lot with the football in his hands. I think he can make an early impact in Gainesville. And then another legacy recruit who just jumped on board a few weeks ago, Ben Hanks Jr. is a cornerback from Miami. Florida's had some success in South Florida this recruiting cycle, which is something that's imperative to Florida doing well on the field. They've got to win recruiting battles in South Florida. Ben Hanks Sr., his father, played linebacker for Steve Spurrier in the 1990s, and in fact, wore Spurrier's famous number 11 jersey for the Gators. Ben Hanks Jr. is a top 100 type recruit, one of the top 10, 12 cornerbacks in the country. 6'1", 6'2", long, lanky. He's got that length, adds a little bit of weight, and I think he could come in and make an impact early too. So they've got a pretty strong class in terms of quality, Dukes. They only have 14 commitments. So that right now, as we're recording this, Florida has the number 19 class in the country. That's not Florida-like. That's not what Florida needs to win and compete at a high level in the SEC, having only the number 19 class in the country, because that puts you like 10th in the SEC. But when you break it down per recruit, 8 of those 14 commitments are 4-stars. 2 of them, Vernell Brown III and Joshua Moore, could end up being 5-stars. So the quality is there. Now it's time for Florida to continue to put that class together and get that number of commitments, in that 20 range, and then we'll be able to really gauge the class as a whole. But there is some real quality at the top, no question about it.
All right, Keith, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to put on your Steve Wiltfong hat. And if you had to select somebody that you would put an RPM prediction on landing with the Gators, who would that person be?
Well, I've been real cautious about this one, but if you follow the visits, like we have always said in this business, there's a linebacker that I mentioned earlier, Ty Jackson. He's at Seminole Ridge High School down in Loxahatchee, Florida. That's Palm Beach County. All right. And this is the number 1 linebacker in the country for On3. And he has been a high priority for the Gators going back well over a year. He has now visited Florida multiple times. He is bonding with the staff. He is extremely high and close with defensive coordinator Austin Armstrong, who has taken a huge role in this recruitment. He gets along well with the other recruits. He thinks there's a path to early playing time in Gainesville. And then also, Dukes, Florida has something called the Gator Made program, where they take football players and other athletes at the school, and they help get them prepared for life after athletics. And some of the the young athletes in that group are part of that program. They get to take trips around the world, and it's a really interesting program. And it's not something that I've really ever thought about. All right. But when you talk to Ty Jackson and you talk to his father, they say that it is extremely important to them and incredibly valuable to this decision and impressive to them. Okay, so it's important and impressive to them. And I think when you add it all up, if Florida can just have a decent season, okay, because again, 11-14 under Billy Napier, they've got to start showing people, schedule be damned. Recruits don't care who they're playing. Most of them, they want to see wins, right? Mm-hmm. But if Florida can put a good product on the field, I could see Ty Jackson ending up in Gainesville. And I think they actually possibly are the favorite right now.
All right, so now we're preparing for week 1. Fall camp is over. Is there any freshman or transfer portal guy who came in last year that you think will have an impact in game 1?
I think you got to start with the transfer portal guys. I mean, so obviously everybody knows Miami's going to have a pretty good defensive line. Like that's their strength, right? That's supposedly their strength. We've heard that about other teams and maybe it didn't end up being their strength, but that is Miami's strength. And so Florida's got a new right tackle this year, and it's Brandon Crenshaw Dixon. He's a transfer from San Diego State. And this is a big test for him because Miami's got Ruben Bain. They've got an outstanding group of defensive linemen and edge rusher types. So that he's going to be really challenged this Saturday. So Brandon Crenshaw Dixon absolutely is somebody to watch for Florida, because if Florida cannot win in the trenches this weekend, then the only way they're going to win is if they win the turnover battle by like 3 or 4, right? They've got to at least be solid in the trenches. Maybe you don't have to win every battle, but you got to be serviceable there. So keep an eye on right tackle Brandon Crenshaw Dixon. Also at the receiver position, Dukes, everybody knows that Florida's got Eugene Wilson back, who had this incredible freshman season last year. But they needed complementary pieces for him, and they brought in 2. Shamir DK, a transfer from Wisconsin, who was Graham Mertz, the quarterback, was his teammate a couple years ago for the Badgers. And their last year together, they connected a lot. So he's a smaller, not smaller, he's just not a big target. He's a fast receiver. So he can do a lot of the things maybe that Eugene Wilson did last year, and that should allow you to free up Eugene Wilson to run intermediate and deeper routes. They also brought in another receiver, a bigger, more physical guy, but also is very good after the catch. And he came from Arizona State, and that's Elijah Badger. So 2 transfer receivers that should be able to contribute to the offense. Now, Badger, Dukes, I think he only averaged like 11 yards a catch last year. So you're like, man, that's not that great. But Arizona State did not have a very good offensive line. So a lot of his passes, a lot of his catches were 3-yard routes where he caught the ball and then had to get the yardage on his own. So that 11-yard average, my throat's getting dry here. That 11-yard average is actually a lot more impressive when you dig a little deeper, when you peel the layers back. Now, on defense, a couple guys we're watching. Joey Slackman, a transfer from the Ivy League, was one of the top defensive line transfers in the transfer portal. And he should be able to contribute a good bit. And then at linebacker, Grayson Pup Howard, transferred from South Carolina. We think he's going to have a big role. And then in the secondary, we're going to be keeping an eye on some guys as well. So I think more transfers than true freshmen. One true freshman maybe to watch, and you mentioned him earlier, LJ McCray. He's going to be a kind of a strong side defensive end, edge type guy. Florida's very strong at that position, so it won't be easy for him to get on the field, but it's also going to be hard to keep him off the field. They've got Tyreek Sapp at that same position. They've got Justice Boone. They've got Cameron James. That really could be a position where you say that's Florida's strongest position on the field. So, but LJ McCray certainly in the mix, but really keep an eye on the transfers more. Those guys are ready, man. They're older guys. That's why they went to Florida to play in games like this.
All right, Keith. Amazing stuff as always, but we got to get to the meat of we got to get to the money. Who do you think wins this game? How, why, and give me a score.
Well, look, you never know what you're going to get in week 1 of the season. And I know in Coral Gables, there's some optimism. They've got many more new faces than even Florida. So I think they probably feel like there's going to be an element of surprise and, that.
Hey, Keith, my bad. Hey, let me re-ask that question.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. All right, Keith, amazing stuff as always, but now we got to get to the money. When I go to Vegas, I'm going to trust you. Tell me how this game is going to go and give me a score prediction.
Yeah, it's a hard game to read because, again, you're talking about week 1. You really don't know what your team is until week 3, week 4, week 5, right? So you're coming out of the gate. You've been practicing. You've been hitting against guys on your own roster. You don't really know what you're made of these days until you play a few games. So it's very hard to figure out what's going to happen. And then you throw in this, Dukes. You've got a bunch of new faces on both rosters, right? I know there's some real optimism in Miami. Some people think that they did about as well in the transfer portal as anybody. I know there's optimism in Gainesville. They've got a lot of returning players. They've got a returning starting quarterback, something Miami doesn't have. They've got a bunch of transfers that they think can be great complementary pieces to the other players they brought back. But to me, the X factor in this game is not a player, Dukes, and it's not a coach. It's the venue. And the swamp is the swamp is the swamp. Now, it hasn't been the swamp like we've seen it in recent years, is what we're used to seeing in the past. But for a game like this, the fans have waited all off season for this thing. It's a long time. These schools have a lot of hate for each other. And, ironically, I think historically Miami I think they actually have a winning record in Gainesville. But this is going to be a major test for Miami. All those new faces. How does this challenge their chemistry, the noise in that stadium, something Florida's used to? So I think in the end of the day, the noise is going to impact Miami's offense. Close game, a lot of field goals. I think Florida maybe ekes one out 24-22 in that range. But again, it could go either way. I think they're actually two solid rosters. I think you could maybe make an argument that on paper, Miami's roster is a little bit better, but Florida, again, returns a lot of guys, Dukes, veteran quarterback, a lot of veterans on the team, and then also you're playing at home in the swamp, and it is going to be one hell of an electric atmosphere. But again, close one.
Electric stuff from Keith Niebuhr, the GOAT. Where can everybody find you on social media, and where can they find your work on Gators Online?
Well, I think you just go to On3Keith at Twitter, On3Keith on Instagram. Go to the Gators Online TikTok page as well, and then obviously GatorsOnline.com right now. We got a lot of stuff getting cranked out this week in preparation for this big game. I can't wait. This was one of my favorite series as a kid. They used to play every year. They don't play every year anymore. So now when they do meet, it's extra special.
All right, man. That's your man, Keith Niebuhr on the 5-Star Flex. Hey, man, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DukesTScoop, and we'll see you next time.